So I'm going to talk about Saturn-Neptune. I have the notion to. I've talked about them before, but the transit of the two, the conjunction of the two continues. So there's updates to be made and contemplations to be had as to their meaning. And of course, we find out more about their meaning every time they do something, particularly these outer planets, because they haven't been known for that long. So Neptune's often associated with redemption. And I was thinking about that because I thought, well, redemption is that which saves us. And it's like, well, that's a Christian concept. It's not a Greek, not a pagan concept. Because if we're astrologers, we're pagans. They knew that in the Middle Ages. That's why they said we summoned demons. They felt the real power of astrology. That's why the church took against it, because astrology's got power and they wanted to be the ones that had the power. Anyway, so yeah, Neptune as redemption, that's which saves us. And of course, well, Jesus saves you, doesn't he? But that's an alien concept to astrology. We don't need saving. We might think we need saving. That's a collective concept. That's people who don't want to put in the work, you could say. Yeah? I mean, there was never anywhere to go. All we do is we come back into a relationship with the universe, with nature, with the sacred. That's what Neptune is. It's this coming back into a relationship with the sacred, which you can do now. Just go and make an offering to a tree or to a god or to Pan, something like that. So it is what you could say, it is what gives us the sense of the sacred, a direct sense of the sacred. It's beyond religion. Religion's more like Jupiter. This is the law. This is how the universe works. This is what the book says. That has its own place too. But Neptune's more like this unmediated experience of the Great Spirit, or whatever you want to call it, the weird. And so when Saturn and Neptune come together, well, we get a lot more Neptune around the place. That's what Saturn does. When he joins together with one of these outer planets, you get an activation. You get a channeling of that immensely powerful energy, whether it's Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto, into the collective. And we're having that. We've got a Saturn-Neptune conjunction at the moment. Now, the last time we had one was about 35 years ago. And it corresponded to the Berlin Wall falling. This time we've got a conjunction between Saturn and Neptune, and we've got huge political events as well. So there does seem to be an association between Neptune and politics, which isn't quite what you'd expect, maybe. But if you look at Neptune as redeemer, or as that which brings us to the sacred, well, religion has fallen. It fell like 100 years ago. Yeats wrote his great poem, The Second Coming. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. The fake religions, the substitute religions, communism, Nazism. So that's why Neptune is associated with politics, because politics has become our substitute for religion. It's why it's so polarizing. It's why it's so, well, it's always been loaded. It's always been polarizing, but perhaps it's more so these days because there isn't collective religion through which to experience the sacred. So we project it onto Marx and saving the poor people and that kind of thing. So that's perhaps why it's political. So last time, the Berlin Wall fell. This time, and that was in Capricorn, that was the structure of the world. Yeah, the Cold War falling, a wall fell. Yeah, Saturn is walls. This time it's in Aries. They've gone into Aries, they've almost conjoined, and now they're going backwards. So in a way, we've had a strong foretaste this year because they've almost met, but not quite. And they're going to go back into Pisces over the next few months and then back forward again. So it's not just Saturn and Neptune conjoining. It's as it changes sign and as it enters the first sign of the zodiac. So it's extra pokey. And given how eventful the world's been, and astrologically, that's just a foretaste. Yeah, the real events are for next year and the year after. So there's three main events. You see, the nature of the world changes. Yeah, the nature of the political world changes, and there's a new vision. So what is going on politically? Well, there's three main events, I'd say. There's, well, probably any number, but there's the two wars that are going on. Russia, Ukraine, and Gaza. And it's worth remembering that we actually live in remarkably peaceful times, historically, in the historical context. It's worth remembering that because the news does throw at us whatever war's going on very, very intensely. So we live in a time of peace. That's worth remembering. But also, these two wars, they're very politically significant. That's the thing about them. They're not big as wars, but they are very politically significant. The Russia-Ukraine war, it's like it's the, I mean, I know it's been going a few years, but I think it's still part of this Saturn-Neptune because it's the next stage on from the Cold War. Russia fell. What is Russia now? And Trump is finding he can't stop this war. Yeah, his mate Vlad won't play ball. And he's going to have to push harder through trade sanctions on countries who trade with Russia. That's his next step. I don't know if that'll work or not, but it is this war is about a recalibration of Russia's relationship with the West. And of course, Europe is rearming because America said, we're not going to be your umbrella anymore. You've got to pull your weight. And Europe is starting to, and I think that's good for Europe. Being able to defend yourself is basic for your self-respect. And of course, Germany's felt too shamefaced too since the Second World War. But it's about time it did, it stopped feeling guilty. It was its grandparents who did whatever. Yeah, you can't feel guilty on behalf of previous generations, which we're always being told to. Anyway, so that's Saturn-Neptune. That's a new vision for the relationship between the West and Russia. And I think Russia's going to find both Europe and America standing up to it. The other one, which is a recalibration, is the Israel-Gaza conflict. That awful, gruesome affair. And that's very loaded in a way that the Ukraine-Russia one isn't loaded, even though there's far more deaths taking place. And it's far more clear, which side is the aggressor with Russia-Ukraine. With Israel, it's not so clear at all, and yet it is far more polarized. Yeah, people taking sides far much more strongly. And the thing about Israel is that it's like us. It's a prosperous democracy. Its people are us, in as much as Jews have lived in Europe, for a long, long time. They're people recognizably like ourselves. Even though their average skin is actually darker, and there's a lot of Arabs live there as well, about a quarter of the population, something like that. They are recognizably ourselves. And what we feel guilty about, what we're told to feel guilty about in the West, is our past of being imperialist and racist. We're told to feel guilty about that. We don't necessarily think that, but we hang our heads. And Israel is being exactly that in the eyes of a lot of people. It's being imperialist and racist and dominating because it can. That's how people see it. And they take the side of the people they see as the victim. So it's what's happening, what Israel is doing reflects where we feel bad about ourselves. Now, I'm doing my best not to take one side or the other in that conflict. I just want to describe that doesn't make Israel right or wrong, the fact that we're projecting onto them. But I think there is still this projection of where we've been told to feel guilty about ourselves. And I think that's Saturn-Neptune as well. And maybe that will change. Maybe we're just going to shrug off this feeling bad about what people did in the 1800s. And maybe that will change the relationship with Israel. Who knows? There's a long while to run in this. These are the kind of foretasters. And the reason I'm saying we might shrug that off is because of what's happening in America. The Saturn-Neptune is bang on the American IC, and opposite, it's MC. So it's certainly changing how it is in the world. It is, even though there's a lot of, Trump says he doesn't want to get involved in any wars, he's still doing the world's policeman job, which it bloody well needs. Would you rather China was the world's policeman? No, thank you. And he is doing his best to stop wars. That's why he goes on about Russia and Ukraine. He hates all the deaths. He keeps saying it. So America, in a way, it is re-emerging as the world's policeman under Trump, even though he doesn't want to be involved. He doesn't want to start any wars. He hasn't started any wars. And that is that MC being empowered. That desire for fairness, which is Libra on the MC. The last time Neptune crossed the American IC was at the time of the American Civil War. So you can see and it also had a Uranus return. And it's got both of those now as well. Neptune on the IC and a Uranus return at the same time. So neither have quite happened yet. But if you think in terms of how seismic the American Civil War was, well, there's something just as seismic, even more seismic coming up because Saturn is involved as well this time. But it doesn't have to mean a war. And I don't think it will mean a war. But in terms of the psychological shift of in America, that will be just as big. So far, what it's been is a shift to the right. And again, I'm going to try and not say right is bad, left is good, or the other way round. I'm sure most of you watching probably instinctively feel left is good and right is bad and heartless. That's how the counterculture works, and astrology is part of that. That's how any part of society that is more open, artists, the bohemian world, that also works like that. They're left, and they tend to think of the right as bad. And we have to drop that if we're going to do good astrology, because that's not how the planets see it. That's not how Pluto thinks. That is not how Pluto thinks. Pluto's on the side of what's real. And Saturn is on the side of what works. And Neptune, not sure, is on the side of the sacred, giving us something worthwhile to treat as sacred. Maybe we build up objects which we worship as sacred that are inadequate to that. And maybe that's part of the function of Saturn-Neptune transits, is to reassess what is sacred, find something more adequate for the time being. So, yeah, America has seen a shift to the right after years of the left, even the Republican being, centre, or even leftish. It is you could see the right as the centre of the wheel. What holds things together? It's the flag, it's national identity. And the left as the circumference of the wheel. It's got the spokes. It allows for variation. It allows for breathing. It allows for the less fortunate. Yeah? The middle is strength. The outside is compassion, and you need both. And we swing from one to the other, and we need both. But there's been a reassertion of the right. This is what gender is. This is what our borders are. Things like that. I think it's more than that. I think it's the end of post-war liberalism as we've known it since the Second World War. Because post-war liberalism, particularly in Europe, has been founded on fear of anything that looks like Hitler. But look at what Germany's doing. Germany is rearming for the first time. That is really fundamental. And this is why this Saturn-Neptune is so big. It's because the Saturn-Neptune is changing sign as it does so, and into the first sign of the zodiac. It's got this extra poke. It's a new vision. And it's a new vision for Europe. I mean, the chart for the EU, it's got mutable angles at the end of the mutable signs: Virgo, Gemini, Pisces and Sagittarius. So the Saturn-Neptune is passing hard aspecting all four of those. So there's some kind of unraveling of the EU going on. It doesn't suggest a new vision because the actual signs are at the end of the mutable. There is some kind of new vision, but it's not the EU as it is. That, in some ways, is unraveling. I mean, it's shown itself unable to stand up to Trump when it came to tariffs. They settled for 15% tariffs they're paying. And they're all miserable about it. But they've got no backbone because they haven't got a backbone together. They haven't found out how to do that because they're not nationalistic enough. They don't stand for something enough. There's nothing that makes the prickles go up our neck when we hear the EU national anthem, because there isn't one. And I'm not saying it ought to have one, but it makes it very difficult when you've got someone who is very much standing up for his own country, like Trump. They can't stand up to it. And they've got no borders either. Trump was saying you need to have borders. And that, again, is the right that goes, you need to have borders. You need to control who you let in and out. That's what the good king does. So this, here I am, I'm being a bit biased here, but I think there is, or at least, I'm coming from a particular side, but I think there is an argument for it at the moment, that we need, we need immigrants and we need to keep welcoming, but we need a policy, and that it keys into that whole guilt about being imperialist and racist, that if we don't let anyone in who wants to come in, we're just being like our ancestors. We're being imperialist and racist. All that old guilt. So it's an end of that old guilt. And I don't think that's a political statement, a polarized, biased political statement for me to make. There is a guilt about our ancestors, and that's coming to an end. And that will enable the new vision. So I've probably said enough for now. There's probably loads more I can say, but that'll do for now. But this is going to keep unfolding for a year or two. So watch this space.